The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 10,000 years. Its walls were made of living crystal that sang when the light touched them. Representatives from 800 different species sat in floating chairs that circled a central platform. Today, they had gathered to celebrate what they believed would be their greatest achievement. Ambassador Svextan of the Corvani Empire stood at the center of the platform. His body was made of blue crystal, and light moved through him like water through glass. He had lived for 3,000 years and had welcomed 62 species into the council. Today would be his 63rd. "The humans are ready," he announced. His voice echoed through the hall like music. "After 300 years of observation, we have determined that Earth has reached sufficient technological maturity. They have achieved nuclear power, primitive space travel, and global communication networks. It is time to offer them membership." High Chancellor Morath nodded from her elevated seat. She was Delvani, a species with 4 eyes and skin that changed color with emotion. Right now, her skin was bright gold, the color of satisfaction. "You may proceed, Ambassador," she said. "Bring humanity into the fold." The council members made sounds of approval. Some clicked, some hummed, some released clouds of pleasant-smelling gas. This was a good day. A new species meant new art, new ideas, new perspectives. Humanity had shown promise. Their music was particularly interesting. None of them knew that they were about to make the biggest mistake in council history. The diplomatic vessel was the size of a small city. It descended through Earth's atmosphere on a bright Tuesday morning. Positioning itself directly above Geneva, Switzerland, the ship cast a shadow that covered half the country. Across the planet, humans stopped what they were doing and looked up. Some screamed, some prayed, some simply stared in silence. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, the answer had finally arrived. Admiral Catherine Cole was not surprised. She stood in the command center of Earth's Unified Defense Command, a secret facility built 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens covered every wall, showing feeds from thousands of satellites and ground stations. "Confirm vessel size," she ordered. 12 kilometers long. Admiral replied Major Samuel Drake from his station. "No weapons. Signatures detected. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. It appears to be a greeting." Cole was 62 years old. Her hair was gray, her face was lined, and her eyes were cold. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. Her grandmother had been a historian who specialized in colonial encounters. She had taught young Catherine a simple lesson. When a powerful stranger arrives offering gifts, they always want something in return. "What are they saying?" Cole asked. "They call themselves the Galactic Council," Drake reported. "They are offering friendship, technology, medicine. They say they want to welcome us into their alliance of peaceful civilizations. And what do they want from us?" Drake was quiet for a moment as he read the translation. His face grew pale. "They want us to surrender our military assets. All of them. They say, we will not need weapons because their collective defense network will protect us." Cole laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Of course they do." The next 6 hours were chaotic. World leaders held emergency meetings. Military forces around the globe went to high alert. The United Nations Security Council convened in a bunker beneath. New York Ambassador Vexton waited patiently aboard his ship. He had done this many times before. New species were always overwhelmed at first. They needed time to process the magnitude of what was being offered. Soon they would send a delegation begging to be included. He was very wrong. President Margaret Harris of the United States was the first to speak with the alien ambassador. She was a former lawyer, calm under pressure and skilled at reading people. She looked at the crystalline being on her screen and felt a chill run down her spine. "Ambassador Vexton," she said, "we are honored by your visit. However, we have some concerns about the terms of membership you have described." "Concerns?" Vexton's crystal body flickered with confusion. "What concerns could you possibly have? We offer you eternal life, unlimited energy, cures for every disease. We offer you the stars themselves. And in exchange, we give up our ability to defend ourselves." "You will not need to defend yourselves." The collective defense network has maintained peace for 1,000 years. No member species has ever been attacked. Harris glanced at a tablet in her hand. Her intelligence teams had been working non-stop since the ship arrived. What they had found was troubling. "What about the Vindari?" she asked quietly. Vexton went still. The light inside his body stopped moving. "How do you know that name?" "We have been listening to your communications for quite some time, Ambassador. We know about the Vindari suppression. We know about the Teleri correction. We know what happens to species that disagree with Council rulings. Those were necessary actions to maintain peace and stability. The Vindari were developing forbidden weapons. The Teleri refused to share critical resources during a crisis. The Council acted for the greater good." "The greater good," Harris repeated. "I see." She was silent for a long moment. Around her, advisors whispered urgently. Some begged her to accept the offer. Some demanded she'd send the aliens away. She ignored them all. "Ambassador," she finally said, "I appreciate your offer. But the United States cannot accept terms that require us to surrender our sovereignty. We must decline." Vexon could not process what he was hearing. "You are refusing? That is not possible. No species has ever refused. There is a first time for everything." For the next 12 hours, every major nation on Earth gave the same answer. Russia declined. China declined. The European Federation declined. Even small nations that could have benefited greatly from Council medicine and technology declined. Admiral Cole coordinated the responses from her underground command center. She made sure every rejection was polite, but firm. She made sure every leader used the same key phrase: "Earth respectfully declines." Ambassador Vexon returned to the Council in a state of shock. He stood before the assembled representatives and struggled to find words. They said no, he finally managed. All of them. Every nation, every leader. They refused. High Chancellor Morith's skin turned dark purple, the color of disbelief. "That is impossible. They are a primitive species. They have barely left their own moon. Why would they refuse the greatest gift in the universe? They know about the Vindari. They know about the Teleri. They have been listening to our communications." The hall erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded to know how humans had obtained classified information. Others called for immediate military action. A few suggested that humanity should simply be left alone to face the dangers of the universe without protection. Morath raised her hand for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "This is unprecedented," she said slowly. "We must consider our response carefully. For now, we wait. We watch. And we try to understand what kind of species we are truly dealing with." But deep in her hearts, she was afraid. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had encountered something they did not understand. And things they did not understand had a way of becoming very dangerous. Far below the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Cole allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. Humanity had drawn its line in the sand. Now it was time to prepare for what came next. The real game was just beginning. 3 months passed after humanity's refusal, and the Galactic Council grew more confused with each passing day. They sent 14 more diplomatic missions to Earth. Each one returned with the same answer. The humans were polite. The humans were respectful. But the humans would not change their minds. High Chancellor Morath spent long nights studying human history. What she found disturbed her deeply. This species had spent most of its existence fighting itself. They had invented weapons of mass destruction and actually used them. They had committed terrible crimes against their own kind. And yet somehow they had survived. "They are insane," said Counselor Drex of the Montari Hive, a species of insect-like beings who shared one collective mind. Any rational species would accept protection from the greater powers of the galaxy. These humans choose vulnerability instead. "Perhaps they do not understand the danger," suggested Counselor Yira of the Delvani Federation. Her 4 eyes blinked thoughtfully. "Perhaps we have not explained clearly enough what awaits them if they remain isolated." "Then go," Morath commanded. "You are our finest empath. If anyone can make them understand, it is you." Yura traveled to Earth with hope in her hearts. She was known throughout the galaxy for her ability to connect with other beings, to feel what they felt, and help them see reason. She had resolved countless conflicts between species who thought they had nothing in common. Secretary of State Daniel Martinez met her in New York. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a warm smile. He shook her hand gently, aware that her species was more fragile than humans. "Welcome to Earth, Counselor Yura," he said. "I hope your journey was comfortable." It was. "Thank you." Yura studied him with her empathic senses. She expected to find fear, uncertainty, maybe even hidden greed. Instead, she found something she had rarely encountered. In her long life, she found absolute conviction. They sat together in a private room overlooking the city. Through the window, Yura could see millions of humans going about their daily lives. They seemed so fragile, so temporary. Their lifespans were barely a century. How could such short-lived creatures be so stubborn? "You must understand our position," Yura began. "The galaxy is not a safe place. There are threats beyond your imagination. The harvesters alone have consumed 12 civilizations in the past millennium." "We have read about the harvesters," Martinez replied calmly. "Biomechanical entities that strip planets of all organic matter. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped." "Exactly. And they will come for Earth eventually. All isolated worlds attract their attention sooner or later. Your only hope of survival is the collective defense network." Martinez leaned back in his chair. "The same network that failed to protect the Vindari?" Yura's skin flushed purple with shame. She had hoped the humans would not bring up that incident again. The Vindari were developing weapons that threatened galactic stability. The Council had no choice but to intervene. Intervene. That is an interesting word for what happened. Martinez pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A holographic image appeared between them. It showed a beautiful planet covered in blue oceans and green continents. Then the image changed, showing the same planet turned to ash and ruin. The Vindari refused to destroy their weapons research, so the Council destroyed their entire civilization. 3 billion dead. Because they wanted the ability to protect themselves. Martinez turned off the device. "Does that sound like an alliance of peaceful civilizations to you?" Yuru had no answer. She had been young when the Vindari suppression occurred. She had believed the official story that the Vindari were dangerous extremists who threatened everyone. Now, looking at the human before her, she wondered for the first time if that story was true. "We do not reject friendship," Martinez continued, his voice gentle but firm. "We welcome trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. But we will not surrender our weapons. We will not place our survival in the hands of others. History has taught us that trust must be earned, not demanded." "And if the harvesters come?" Martinez smiled. It was not the smile of a frightened man. It was the smile of someone who knew something she did not. "Then we will face them. On our own terms? Win or lose, we will face them as free people." Yura left Earth feeling something she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she was not certain that the Council was right. Her report to High Chancellor Morith was troubling. "They are not ignorant or foolish," she said. "They understand the risks perfectly. They simply believe that freedom is worth dying for." "Freedom to do what?" Morith demanded. "Fight among themselves? Pollute their planet? Develop weapons that could destroy them all? Freedom to choose their own path? Freedom to make their own mistakes? Freedom to rise or fall based on their own decisions?" Yura paused. "I find myself wondering if perhaps we have forgotten what that feels like." Morath dismissed her with a wave, but the words stayed with her long after Yura was gone. Meanwhile, humanity was not idle. Far from Earth, hidden in the darkness between stars, a secret fleet was growing. Admiral Cole had overseen its construction for 20 years. The project had begun long before the Council made contact. Based on technology recovered from a crashed alien vessel on the Moon, Commander Lisa Grant commanded one of these hidden ships. The vessel was called the Defiance, a fitting name for humanity's first true warship. It carried weapons that would have shocked the Council. It moved faster than anything they believed humans capable of building. "Status report," Grant ordered as she walked onto the bridge. Lieutenant Kevin Palmer looked up from his station. He was young, barely 25, but he was the best sensor operator in the fleet. "The Council has deployed 3 surveillance satellites in lunar orbit. They think they are being clever. Let them watch," Grant replied. "What do they see?" "Chemical rockets. Primitive space stations. The Mars colony they know about." Palmer grinned. "They have no idea we are here." Grant nodded with satisfaction. The deception had been carefully planned. On the surface, humanity appeared to be exactly what the Council expected, a primitive species just beginning to reach for the stars. They had no way of knowing about the shipyards on Europa. They knew nothing about the mining operations in the asteroid belt or the weapons factories hidden beneath the ice of Titan. 50. Years of secret development. Thousands of people who had kept the greatest secret in human history. And now, with the Council watching their every move, the hidden fleet continued to grow. Captain Christopher Bennett approached Grant with a tablet in his hand. "Admiral Cole has sent new orders. We are to observe the Council patrol ship that entered the system yesterday. Under no circumstances are we to engage." "Understood." Grant studied the tactical display. The Council ship was enormous compared to the Defiance, but she felt no fear. Her vessel was faster, more maneuverable, and carried weapons the Council had never seen. If it came to a fight, she was confident she would win, but that was not the plan. Not yet. Back on Earth, Admiral Cole reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Council was growing impatient. Their diplomatic language was becoming less friendly. They were starting to discuss alternative approaches to the human problem. "How long do we have?" asked President Harris during their weekly briefing. "Hard to say," Cole replied. "The Council is slow to make decisions. They will debate and discuss for months, maybe years. But eventually, they will decide that humanity is too dangerous to leave alone. And then..." Cole's eyes were cold. "Then they will try to do to us what they did to the Vindari. And we will show them why that would be a very bad idea." Harris nodded slowly. She had made her choice when she rejected the Council's offer. There was no turning back now. Somewhere in the vastness of space, the harvesters were moving. They had detected a new source of organic matter on the edge of the galaxy. A small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. The swarm changed course, drawn by the scent of life. They had consumed countless worlds. They expected this one to be no different. They had never encountered humans before. The hidden fleet gathered in the shadow of Jupiter. 200 warships floated in perfect formation, their hulls painted black to blend with the darkness of space. From a distance, they were invisible. Up close, they were terrifying. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching the other ships through the reinforced glass. Each vessel was a miracle of engineering, built in secret over decades by the most brilliant minds humanity had ever produced. The Council believed humans were still struggling to reach Mars. They had no idea that humanity had already conquered the outer solar system. "Beautiful, are they not?" said Chief Engineer Maria Santos as she joined Grant at the window. She was a small woman with graying hair and oil-stained hands. She had helped design the engines that powered these ships. "They are," Grant agreed. "Let us hope we never have to use them." Santos laughed softly. "We will use them. We both know that. The only question is when." The question was answered 3 days later. Admiral Cole's face appeared on every screen in the fleet. Her expression was grim. "We have detected harvester scout ships entering the outer system. Initial estimates suggest this is an advanced force, testing our defenses before the main swarm arrives." Grant felt her stomach tighten. They had prepared for this. They had trained for this. But nothing could truly prepare you for facing an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. "The Galactic Council has already contacted Earth," Cole continued. "They are offering their protection one final time. High Chancellor Marath has warned that if we refuse, they will not come to our aid when the harvesters attack." "In our response?" Grant asked, though she already knew the answer. Cole's lips curved into a thin smile. "Earth respectfully declines. The fleet erupted into cheers. Grant let them celebrate for a moment before raising her hand for silence. You heard the Admiral? We have work to do. Battle stations. On Earth, the announcement caused panic. For months, the government had prepared the population for this moment. They had revealed the existence of the hidden fleet, explained the danger they faced, and asked for volunteers to crew the new ships. Being built every day, millions had answered the call. Secretary? Martinez watched the news coverage from his office in Washington. Protesters filled the streets, some demanding surrender to the council, others demanding immediate war. Fear was everywhere. But underneath the fear, he saw something else. He saw determination. The people are scared, observed his aide, a young woman named Rachel Torres. Of course they are, Martinez replied. They should be scared. The harvesters have destroyed species far more powerful than us. But look at them, Rachel. They are not running. They are not hiding. They are standing up. Torres looked at the screens. She saw parents hugging their children. She saw soldiers shipping out to orbital stations. She saw factories running day and night, producing weapons and ships and everything else the fleet needed. Maybe we really are crazy, she said quietly. Martinez smiled. Maybe, but it is the kind of crazy that built this civilization. The kind of crazy that crossed oceans in wooden ships and walked on the moon. We do not surrender. We do not give up. That is what makes us human. Far from Earth, the Harvester Scouts were learning that their prey was not as helpless as expected. The first engagement occurred near the orbit of Neptune. 3 Harvester vessels approached what they believed to be a simple mining station. Lieutenant Palmer was the first to detect them. Contact. 3 vessels, bearing 27 Mark IV. They are heading directly for Station Omega. Commander Grant studied the tactical display. Station Omega was a weapons research facility disguised as a mining operation. If the harvesters discovered its true purpose, they would call for reinforcements. Intercept course, she ordered. Prepare to engage. The Defiance moved like a ghost through the darkness. Its engines were nearly silent, designed by Santos and her team to produce minimal heat signature. By the time the harvesters detected them, it was too late. Grant had studied every recording of harvester combat ever captured. She knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their strange biological logic. They expected their prey to flee or to mount a desperate futile defense. They did not expect their prey to hunt them. Fire, she commanded. The Defiance's weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy. They did not use plasma or lasers or any of the standard technologies favored by Council species. Instead, they fired concentrated bursts of exotic particles that disrupted the molecular bonds holding matter together. The first harvester ship simply fell apart. One moment it was a terrifying mass of biological and mechanical components. The next moment it was dust. The other 2 ships tried to flee. They never made it. All targets destroyed, Palmer reported, his voice shaking slightly. No damage to our vessel? Grant allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The first battle was over, and humanity had won. But she knew this was only the beginning. Send a message to Admiral Cole, she ordered. Tell her the harvesters bleed just like everything else. The Council received reports of the engagement within hours. They had spy satellites scattered throughout human space, watching everything. What they saw made them very nervous. That is impossible, Counselor Drex insisted, his insect body trembling with agitation. Human technology cannot produce weapons of that magnitude. Our assessment indicated they were at least 2 centuries behind current galactic standards. Clearly, our assessment was wrong, Yura replied quietly. High Chancellor Morath stared at the tactical recordings with all 4 of her eyes. She watched the harvester ships disintegrate. She analyzed the energy signatures of the human weapons, and she realized something that filled her with cold dread. They have been lying to us, she whispered. All this time they have been pretending to be weaker than they are. Why would they do that? Drex demanded. Because they do not trust us. Because they wanted us to underestimate them. Morath turned to face the Council. We thought we were dealing with primitives. We were wrong. We are dealing with predators. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some council members argued for immediate intervention. They wanted to destroy the human fleet before it grew any stronger. Others counseled patience. The harvesters would do their work for them, they said. Let humanity exhaust itself fighting the swarm. Yura listened to all of this with growing unease. She remembered her conversation with Secretary Martinez. She remembered the conviction she had sensed in him, and she wondered if the council was making a terrible mistake. We should help them, she finally said. Her words silenced the chamber. Help them? Morith's skin darkened with anger. They rejected our protection. They lied to us. They have built weapons that could threaten the stability of the entire galaxy. They built those weapons because they do not trust us, Yura replied. And looking at our history, can we blame them? We destroyed the Vindari. We suppressed the Talari. We have forced every species that joined us to give up their ability to defend themselves. Perhaps if we had been honest from the beginning, things would be different. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that we have an opportunity here. The harvesters are coming. Humanity is fighting. If we help them now, not as masters, but as true allies, we might gain something more valuable than another subject species. Yura paused. We might gain a friend, Morith considered her words. For a moment, something like doubt flickered across her face. Then it was gone. No, she decided. We cannot reward their defiance. We will wait. We will watch. And when the harvesters have broken them, we will be there to pick up the pieces. Yura said nothing more. But as she left the chamber, she made a decision of her own. If the council would not help humanity, perhaps she could find another way. In the darkness of space, the harvester swarm grew closer. Billions of individual organisms moving with one purpose. They had received the distress call from their destroyed scouts. They knew now that this prey would not be easy. They did not care. They had time. They had numbers. They had consumed species far more dangerous than these soft, fragile humans, or so they believed. The harvester swarm arrived on a Tuesday. They emerged from hyperspace like a cloud of darkness, blocking out the distant stars. Billions of individual organisms, ranging in size from insects to city blocks, moved together with perfect coordination. They had destroyed 12 civilizations. They had never been defeated. Admiral Catherine Cole watched their arrival from the command center of the Relentless, her flagship. The tactical display showed the enemy positions as a spreading red stain across the outer solar system. Her own fleet was a small cluster of blue dots near the orbit of Mars. Total enemy count? She asked quietly. Major Drake worked his console with trembling fingers. Approximately 40 million individual organisms, Admiral. 7,000 capital class entities. Estimated total biomass equivalent to a small moon. Cole nodded slowly. Her fleet numbered just over 200 ships. They were outnumbered beyond any reasonable hope of victory. Then we had better get started, she said. Signal all ships. Operation Defiance is a go. The plan had been developed over 20 years. Every simulation, every war game, every late-night planning session had led to this moment. Humanity would not meet the harvesters in open battle. That would be suicide. Instead, they would fight a different kind of war. Commander Grant led the first strike force. 50 ships, the fastest in the fleet, swept around the edge of the swarm and targeted the harvester command organisms. These massive creatures coordinated the movements of billions of smaller units. Without them, the swarm would fall into chaos. Remember your training, Grant told her crews. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they can respond. We are not here to win battles. We are here to win a war. The attack came without warning. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids, from the shadow of Jupiter's moons, from positions the harvesters had not thought to check. Their weapons tore through the command organisms, scattering the nearby swarm units into confused clusters. Then, before the harvesters could reorganize, the human ships vanished back into the darkness. First wave successful, Grant reported to Admiral Cole. 17 command organisms destroyed. Minimal casualties on our side? Excellent. Proceed to secondary targets.
Oh.
The war continued like this for 3 days. Human ships struck without warning, destroyed priority targets, and disappeared before the harvesters could respond. The swarm adapted, trying to protect its command structure, but the humans adapted faster. On Earth, the population watched the battle unfold through carefully edited news reports. They saw their ships fighting against impossible odds. They saw heroes emerging from every engagement. They saw hope where there should have been only despair. Secretary Martinez addressed the United Nations General Assembly on the second day of fighting. The Galactic Council believed we would surrender when faced with this threat. They believed we would beg for their protection, accept their chains in exchange for survival. He paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. They were wrong. Humanity does not surrender. We did not survive ice ages, plagues, and our own foolishness by giving up. We survived by fighting, and we will fight now. The assembly rose to its feet, applauding. But not everyone was celebrating. High Chancellor Moreth watched the battle from her chambers aboard the Council flagship. She had positioned her fleet at the edge of human space, close enough to observe, but far enough to avoid involvement. What she saw filled her with conflicting emotions. "They are actually winning," she whispered. Counselor Yera stood beside her, watching the same tactical display. Not winning, surviving. There is a difference. Their fleet is tiny compared to the swarm. They are not fighting the way we would fight, Yera explained. They are not trying to destroy the enemy. They are trying to hurt it, to make it bleed, to make it wonder if the cost of victory is worth the prize. Moreth turned to look at her. "You admire them, respect them. They rejected our protection because they believed they could protect themselves. They were right. Cannot defeat the harvesters. Not in the long run. The swarm will adapt. It always does. Perhaps." Yera's 4 eyes remained fixed on the display. "But they have already done what no other species has managed. They have made the harvesters afraid." It was true. For the first time in recorded history, the harvester swarm hesitated. Its advance toward Earth slowed, then stopped entirely. The individual organisms clustered together, forming defensive formations. No longer spreading out in search of prey, Admiral Cole noticed the change immediately. "They are learning," she told her staff. "They realize we are not like their previous victims." "Is that good or bad?" asked Captain Christopher Bennett. "Both. It means they will be more careful. But it also means we have time. Time to prepare for the next phase." The next phase was desperate and brilliant. While the harvesters regrouped, human engineers worked around the clock on a project that had been in development for decades. Deep beneath the surface of Europa, we're building something that would change the war forever, Commander. Grant received her orders on the 5th day of fighting. She read them twice, certain she had misunderstood. "This is insane," she said. Lieutenant Palmer looked over her shoulder. "What does it say?" "We are going to attack the heart of the swarm, not hit and run. A direct assault on their central mass." "With what?" "We do not have enough ships." Grant shook her head slowly. "Not ships. Something else. Something new." The council watched in disbelief as a massive object emerged from behind Jupiter. It was not a ship. It was too large, too irregular in shape. It looked almost like a small moon. "What is that?" Moreth demanded. Her tactical officers scrambled to analyze the object. When they finally had an answer, they could not believe it. "Appears to be an asteroid," one of them reported. "But it has been modified. Engines have been attached. Weapons have been installed. They have turned a rock into a warship." Ira laughed softly. "Of course they did. That is exactly what humans would do." The asteroid, which the humans had named Thor's Hammer, accelerated toward the center of the harvester swarm. It was too large to stop, too fast to avoid. The harvesters threw everything they had at it, but their weapons could not penetrate the kilometers of solid rock protecting its vital systems. As it approached, hatches opened along its surface. Thousands of smaller ships launched from within, each carrying specialized weapons designed specifically to harm harvester biology. They spread through the swarm like a virus, destroying everything they touched. Commander Grant led the attack from the Defiance. She had never felt anything like this. Terror and exhilaration mixed together until she could not tell them apart. Around her, harvester organisms died by the millions. Her own people died too, their ships torn apart by the desperate counterattacks of a wounded enemy. Keep pushing, she ordered. We are almost there. Almost there meant the queen. Every harvester swarm had one. A massive organism that served as the central intelligence for the entire collective. Kill the queen, and the swarm would fall apart. But the queen was protected by the densest concentration of defenders Grant had ever seen. Thousands of harvester warships surrounded it, their weapons creating a wall of death that nothing could penetrate. Nothing except a human, who had nothing left to lose. Grant looked at her crew. They were exhausted, terrified, and ready to die. She loved every single one of them. I need volunteers, she said. One ship has to get through. One ship has to reach the queen. Every hand on the bridge went up. Grant smiled. Then let us make history. The Defiance accelerated to maximum speed. Its weapons fired continuously, cutting a path through the enemy. Harvester organisms slammed into its hull, trying to tear it apart. The shields failed. The armor began to buckle. But still they pushed forward. Admiral Cole Grant transmitted as the Queen came into view, "Tell them we never gave up. Tell them we faced the darkness, and we did not blink." Then she gave the order to fire everything they had. The Queen exploded. The shockwave rippled through the swarm, severing the connections between billions of organisms. Without their guiding intelligence, they turned on each other, attacking anything that moved. The Defiance was caught in the chaos. Grant watched as harvester organisms tore her ship apart piece by piece. She felt no fear, only pride. For Earth, she whispered. For humanity. Then there was only light. The silence after battle is always strange. Where there had been chaos and fire and screaming, suddenly there was nothing. Just the cold emptiness of space and the drifting remains of two fleets that had tried to destroy each other. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of the Relentless, staring at the tactical display. The red icons that had represented the harvester swarm were gone. In their place was a field of debris stretching across millions of kilometers. Mixed among the alien wreckage were the remains of human ships. So many human ships. Casualty reports, she asked quietly. Major Drake's voice was hollow. We lost 112 vessels, Admiral. Approximately 8,000 personnel. Commander Grant and her entire crew are confirmed dead. Cole closed her eyes. 8,000 lives. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, people who had volunteered to fight for a world they would never see again, and the enemy. The swarm is destroyed. Without the Queen, the remaining organisms turned on each other. Our cleanup crews are eliminating the last survivors now. Drake paused. We won, Admiral. We actually won. Won. Such a simple word for such an impossible thing. No species had ever defeated the harvesters in open battle. No species had ever killed a queen. Humanity had done both in a single day. Cole opened her eyes. Begin recovery operations. I want every piece of wreckage cataloged, every escape pod recovered, every body brought home. She turned to face her crew. These people died for us. We will not forget them. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People poured into the streets not to protest this time, but to celebrate. They waved flags and hugged strangers and cried tears of joy and grief mixed together. They had survived. Against all odds, against the predictions of every advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had survived. President Margaret Harris addressed the world from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. Today we mourn the fallen, she said. Today we honor the brave men and women who gave their lives so that humanity might live. Commander Lisa Grant, Lieutenant Kevin Palmer, Chief Engineer Maria Santos, and thousands more whose names we will speak and remember for as long as our species exists. She paused, looking out at the crowd that stretched beyond sight. The Galactic Council told us that we could not protect ourselves. They told us that only their great alliance could save us from the darkness. They were wrong. We saved ourselves, not because we had better technology or greater numbers, but because we refused to give up because we would rather die free than live as servants. The crowd erupted in cheers. Harris waited for the noise to die down before continuing. But our work is not done. The harvesters were only one threat among many. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, and we are still learning our place in it. We must rebuild our fleet. We must strengthen our defenses. And we must show the universe that humanity is here to stay, across the galaxy. The Galactic Council watched this speech with very different emotions. High Chancellor Morath sat alone in her chambers, staring at the image of President Harris. Her skin had turned pale gray, the color of defeat. Everything she had believed about humanity was wrong. Everything she had believed about the Council was wrong. A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. She did not want to see anyone. But when she saw who was waiting, she could not refuse. Counselor Yura entered quietly. She moved to stand beside Morath, looking at the same image. "You were right," Morath said finally. "We should have helped them. Perhaps they needed to do this alone." Yura's eyes reflected the light from the display. They needed to prove to themselves that they did not need us. Now they know. And now, perhaps they will be willing to talk? Talk? After everything we said? After we refused to help them fight? Humans are strange creatures. They hold grudges, yes. But they also believe in second chances. I think, if we approach them correctly, they might give us one. Morath considered this for a long moment. Then she made a decision that would change the future of the galaxy. Prepare a diplomatic mission. Not the usual kind. No demands, no conditions. Just an offer of friendship. Real friendship between equals. Yura smiled. I know just the person to lead it. 3 months later, Secretary Daniel Martinez stood at the entrance to the Galactic Council chambers. He was the first human ever to set foot in this ancient hall. Behind him, the representatives of 800 species waited in nervous silence. Admiral Cole had opposed this meeting. She did not trust the Council. She believed they would try to trap humanity again, to regain the control they had lost. But Martinez had convinced her to give peace a chance. If we can fight like humans, he had said, we should also be able to forgive like humans. Now he walked to the central platform, where Counselor Yura waited to greet him. She extended her hand in the human fashion. He took it gently. Welcome to the Council, Secretary Martinez, she said. On behalf of all member species, I offer our sincere apologies for how we treated your people. We were wrong. We underestimated you, and we are sorry. Martinez nodded slowly. Apology accepted, Counselor. Now, shall we discuss the future? The negotiations that followed were long and difficult. Humanity refused to join the collective defense network. They would never surrender their weapons or their sovereignty. But they agreed to other things. Trade agreements, scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, and most importantly, a mutual defense pact. If the harvesters ever returned, or if any other threat emerged, humans and council species would fight together, not as masters and servants, not as protectors and protected, but as allies, as equals. High Chancellor Morath signed the treaty herself. Her skin was bright gold, the color of hope. For the first time in 1,000 years, she felt that the council was moving in the right direction. This is a new beginning, she announced to the assembled representatives. Today we welcome humanity not as subjects, but as partners. Together, we will build a better galaxy. Together, we will face whatever darkness the future holds, Martinez replied with a smile. Humanity came to the stars not as conquerors or beggars, but as survivors. We rejected your diplomacy because it was not real diplomacy. It was control dressed in pleasant words. But this is different. This is what we were looking for all along. A chance to stand with you, not behind you. Never again will any species face extinction alone. The chamber erupted in applause. For the first time, the great hall of the Galactic Council rang with sounds of genuine unity. Far from the celebrations, in orbit above Earth, a new ship was being built. It was called the Grant, named after the commander who had sacrificed everything to destroy the Harvester Queen. Its hull bore the emblems of both. Earth and the Galactic Council. Its crew would include humans and aliens working side by side. Admiral Cole watched its construction from a viewing platform. She had opposed the alliance at first. She had spent her whole life preparing to fight alone. But maybe, she thought, there was strength in unity too. Maybe humans did not have to carry the burden of survival by themselves. A message arrived on her tablet. It was from Counselor Yura. "Thank you," it read, "for giving us a second chance. For showing us that the old ways were broken. For teaching us what true courage looks like. The galaxy will never be the same." "And that is a good thing," Cole smiled, something she rarely did. Then she typed a reply. "The galaxy needed us. Now it has us. Heaven help anyone who threatens what we are building together." She sent the message and turned back to watch the shipyard. The grant was almost finished. Soon it would launch on its first mission, carrying hope to the far corners of the galaxy. Humanity had rejected diplomacy, and in doing so, they had saved themselves and changed everything. They had earned something that no treaty could ever provide. They had earned respect, and that was just the beginning.